You should just get a stream deck.
All right, everyone. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's December 21st, 2022. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. Cloud Posse is a DevOps accelerator. We help companies conquer AWS using our proven blueprints for Terraform. If you're starting from scratch or just not that happy with what you have today, then you should head over to cloudposse.com/quiz and book a session directly with me. I'll show you what your future could look like. And best of all, you can have it today, really quickly. So for those of you new to the call, the format's very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. If you're curious about Cloud Posse or any of our open source tools and modules, this is a great place to ask. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by heading over to cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/officehours. We host these calls every week. Our call today is recorded, and we're automatically going to post a recording of this session to our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy the content and want to support what we're up to over here, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. It helps us out a great deal. So with that said, let's kick this off. I had barely any time to prepare today, so I only have 9 announcements. Actually, I didn't expect to find so many things to talk about today. So lots of exciting things going on despite it almost being Christmas. So first one is just a reminder, last week we talked about the newest Atmos command, Atmos describe affected. If you're using Terraform and you're using a monorepo for your Terraform, this is the missing link. This is how you can effectively discover which configurations in the monorepo were affected. And by leveraging Atmos, you're also getting all the power of deep merging, multiple inheritance, and so forth. Behind Atmos. So Atmos is a workflow automation tool. It supports Terraform, Helm file, and you can also write all of your own custom subcommands. So it's not limited to just one tool or technology. A lot more coming to this. We have some exciting plans on how we're going to use this. Actually, Jonas, I saw your question in the office hours chat. I think that this could be one of the things that we want to talk about related to your question. Matt, I just saw you you put yourself on video. Was there something you wanted to add?
No, I was just going to say you only mentioned that it gets the config changes, but it also picks up module changes as well.
Yeah. So
like either if your Terraform code changes or your config changes, your variables that you're passing to it change, it will tell you everything that needs to be basically replanned and reapplied based on your head branch that you point to, which is pretty cool.
Yep. So the inspiration behind this tool were some other monorepo tools like Turbo Repo and NX. Both of them implement this affected functionality. Atmos does that now too. So it's one of the first of its kind to do that with Terraform. All right. Next announcement is, also something you brought up, Matt, was a comprehensive study guide for anyone looking to break into cybersecurity. It was a timely post because in the office hour, in the sweetops Slack, in the security channel, someone just asked last week how to go about this. So this looks like a nice comprehensive list with almost 2,000 stars. So that's a vote of confidence. Anything to add to this one?
No, it was just one of the nicest sort of gathering of links to other things to help you learn security best practices that I've found around things that are very poignant for this audience, right? So there's lots of AWS and Kubernetes and a lot of the things that we use day to day. So
yeah, I like that it's broken out like that. So specific plans around AWS and GCP and so forth. All right. Next one was a pretty scary announcement. So while no customer data has yet been affected by this, obviously this was a source code only leak. The problem is that this now gives potential attackers a lot of new vectors that they could approach. Okta has had a pretty good track record. I guess they did have one recent incident that they could have handled better, and they were criticized for it. Unfortunately, this is, I guess, too much too soon. So the source code for the Okta access management product was leaked. Auth0 code was not affected, but I'm guessing that's like 1% of their user base. Any other insights on this leak?
The one thing I'll say is that it just keeps underscoring how hard it is to get security right, like just in general, right? I mean, this is a company whose sole job is basically to do security, and they couldn't do that. They couldn't do that right.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it only gets harder the larger the company goes and the greater the surface. I'm actually surprised this stuff doesn't happen more often, with so many developers checking out the code, GitHub access tokens floating around. Now those are finally can be more restricted, but previously they couldn't. You know, it's it'll be interesting to find out what the postmortem on that was if they come out on it. All right, it's always a rogue contractor's laptop was compromised. Another announcement, EKS now supporting PrivateLink so that you can directly access AWS APIs without going out and back in again. So from the VPC directly to AWS APIs. That's a welcome addition. And AWS has been continuously investing in their Terraform modules. So anybody who hasn't checked that out, AWS IA had a little rocky start, but they've definitely turned a corner with the community. They're releasing a lot of nice Terraform modules, accepting pull requests, which wasn't a possibility early on. And yeah, just shown a real commitment to Terraform. So check that out. A lot of exciting things going on here. So
I think the one thing that I'll just say here is I think that there is maybe I misread it, but I thought when I read this that there was a deeper integration where something within AWS is actually using the Terraform to provision this.
Really?
Maybe I'm incorrect, but yeah, I thought that when you were actually provisioning the file gateway, it uses something, like somehow it uses that module to configure it, but maybe I'm incorrect. No, the Terraform module will do correct. No, I guess I must have misread what it said there. I thought it was more I thought it was more interesting than than what it is then, if that's the case.
Yeah. All right. That was good. Anyways, good to bring up. Next announcement on my list. Let's close some tabs here.
One question regarding the AWS IA Terraform modules. As far as I remember, they wanted to use the new AWS provider, so not the default Terraform AWS provider, the Cloud Control API, and they were building their modules around that. I don't know if that plan was actually implemented. So did anybody use either the AWS IA module or the Terraform AWS Cloud Control API provider thingy? Any experiences? How did that go? This is high on my to-do list.
I've used the provider to build chatbot stuff, the CC provider, and it works fine. But I wouldn't use it if I could use the standard provider, I would say.
Yeah, it gets messy when you have both providers in use within the same project. You kind of want to use one or the other.
Sorry, so one is provided by HashiCorp, the other one is a AWS specific one now, or what's going on?
Like
they're
open
both.
source. Go ahead.
They're both official. The CC one is, so there was the Terraform AWS provider. That's the one that has existed I want to say since Terraform existed. So it's basically all it for every new resource, somebody has to create a pull request that implements that resource. And a year ago, 2 years ago, AWS came out with Cloud Control API, which is a CRUDL API for all their services that has clearly defined API calls for every single new thing they're launching and for every product in their organization. So the idea is that instead of having every single time AWS releases a new feature, there's not integrators like Terraform, like Plumi, like a bunch of other companies are not going to have to dedicate effort to translating from the AWS API to their internal API. If they know how to do CRUD, they can just use Cloud Control API. That's the plan.
Yeah.
I don't know how much. I know Cloud Control is much more unstable. I don't know about the Terraform provider. I haven't used it, and it's high on my to-do list because I want to know if that's the future of Terraform on AWS. Like, is it going
Nice
to
to
be
know,
one?
right?
If not, like, what's gonna happen?
So like, yeah, I don't know the coverage. I remember when Cloud Controller came out, but I didn't realize it needed its own provider, and also I don't really understand the coverage between the two, but I guess I'll find out.
I mean, clearly AWS is moving in that direction. They want to move everything to the Cloud Control API because it has consistent verbs across all resources. Where, like, now if you look at the current like AWS SDK, or their current API, they have so many different even like describe and list and everything, or what you're describing and listing vary from resource to resource to resource, like how you call those calls.
Yeah, classic example would be looking at IAM policies and trying to get the same action like names for S3 and say updating ECR, and they're disparate and it's confusing.
Yeah, my upcoming AWS CLI deep dive course, I had to go through, and I was trying to figure out if there was like a rhyme and rhythm to what they chose. And I mean, there kind of is, but there also kind of is not. I guess the question really would be, is like, would Cloud Controller be what the SDK would be powered by eventually? I don't know.
They've actually, they've actually announced that that's what their plan is basically to, like, they eventually plan on deprecating the original API and all the SDKs that are wrapped around the original APIs in favor of Cloud Control. Like, the idea of Cloud Control is really that it's the new consistent API to everything AWS, but they weren't ready to make that leap, obviously, in V1 of it, or whatever you want to call it here. They want to get it in the wild to get people to start using it, and hopefully they'll get some natural attrition off of the V1, or the legacy API, and onto the Cloud Control API. And then once they do that, they'll go kind of shift everything on top of that.
I wonder how they do the mapping, because like there's so many weird named stuff. So I guess they have to get creative, but I guess it still falls under CRUD pattern.
Yeah, it's in the resource naming itself, like not in the name of the methods. Like, that's how, like, you actually pass it as metadata for what you want to list and how you want to list it, and some of those other things that used to be like purpose-built methods. So now it's more just standard CRUD driven.
All built on top of Rails. It's a bad Rails. In Rails, if everything's very conventional.
I know. It's the one thing I was going to say is that the good news about it is that all the providers like Terraform, et cetera, can then auto generate their code, from the API definitions, and get consistent, up-to-date support, like Pulumi's new versions have been doing. But it's going to take us some time to get everyone to kind of adopt that, I think. So
Dave's taking a step back, looking at the module itself. It's weird. Why are they defining a provider for AWS CC, but it doesn't seem like they're using it anywhere?
Yeah, I think they're just doing preliminary work, because that's what I was going to say, is that I noticed that they have it defined in the provider definitions, but they don't actually, like, all the resources are still the AWS _ resources. So for anyone that isn't 100% like clued in on Terraform on this, is that the first block of the resource name tells you the provider it comes from. So if you see a resource like whatever, like the S3 bucket, it's like AWS. Yeah, there's one like AWS _ storage gateway, blah blah blah. That the AWS part is the name of the provider. So anything that comes from the AWS CC provider would say AWS CC there. So it's a AWS CC _ foo, at that point.
Yep. Yeah, the only where places is used.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I didn't see it anywhere else either because I did the same search.
Yeah, I was just scratching my head there.
Yeah.
Will that? I guess it's just by default just going to rely on the SDK to get your AWS credentials and so forth. So it's not going to force you to define it. What was the problem we had? Because we have like the Cloud Posse AWS utils provider. And just by us defining it, it caused a whole lot of havoc for people because now they had to define 2 AWS configurations, like if they're operating in multiple regions.
Oh, I think people just were had an adversity to using it when they weren't explicitly opting into it. So really what ended up happening was that we had modules that used that provider under the hood, like in a downstream dependency, and no one really realized that was happening. So in order to use it and not point at the default region, you would need to then define both providers and pass them in. And it wasn't blatantly obvious, and people were upset by that. So,
yeah. So the next announcement is exciting for anyone using Control Tower at, I guess, any certain scale. A big criticism of Control Tower has been that it was single-threaded. You can only provision one account at a time. So now you can provision up to 5 accounts concurrently, and then the rest, I'm not sure if they will be queued or how they're handled or just rejected. Still waiting to see proper API support for Control Tower, but I'm hoping that's not too far off. Obviously, once API support is added there, then it becomes a first-class citizen for Terraformers to start using.
Yeah, it probably will only be in the CC provider.
Yeah, possibly. Let's see here. So I guess as a just on your comment there, Matt, my internal dialogue was going, well, I'm guessing people are going to want this anyways, who have a large entrenched Terraform AWS provider usage, so they could just speak to those APIs in the AWS provider, but the contract as such with the provider is that they won't do that. Probably.
I mean, you can mix and match which resources you use in Terraform, but there is no in any of the Terraform plugins, plugin SDKs, including their new one, which is completely rehauled. There's a like hard-walled boundary around the provider. Like that's a black box entry point with very well-defined API between it. So there's no way for one provider to use another provider like under the hood.
Yeah.
Is there a way to do, what was the new thing they introduced? Moved, migrated, whatever flag on resources between providers?
No.
Yeah,
because it's that block. Yeah, we looked into that. That block belongs to a resource basically, and that resource is tied to the provider.
All right. Next,
for anyone that's interested, there's a way you can kind of hack it if you wanted to write it, but it doesn't follow the best practices, and it doesn't really, like, you would have to essentially like import like internal code from the 2 different providers, like from one provider, in order to do that. You could do it, but it would be kind of hacky and wouldn't be supported by Terraform, and probably big asterisk may break something in the future kind of thing.
Yeah. Next announcement. It was announced some time ago, I forget, maybe a few months ago, that GitHub repository scanning was available for GitHub organizations that have subscribed specifically to this offering. This is now available for free on open source repositories. So it's a nice little addition there. I thought I had brought this up last week, but apparently I had forgot to announce it. This is a really nice addition. It wasn't at least on my slides. So Spacelift has had a very primitive Slack integration. You couldn't really set up any configuration around what type of notifications went to what channels and who got what. Now, these are driven by the same policy engine that controls everything else in Spacelift. So now you can have notification policies on your stacks and help teams self-administer their infrastructure stacks and stay on top of confirmation steps and failures and so forth. So very welcome addition to Spacelift. And since it's just like, if you're already using Spacelift policies, custom policies that you're terraforming, this should be pretty easy for you. I just got to write more policies. Has anybody already kicked the tires on the Spacelift policies and notification policies?
Not yet.
All right. Yeah, we'll keep you guys updated as we add support and opinions on it. And yeah, the last notification, just a big shout out to Vlad in this case, who brought it to my attention. I'm totally humbled. The Cloud Posse is totally humbled and flattered. We received a sponsorship out of the blue from AWS to help us on the open source that we do, the Terraform. So massive, amount of gratitude for that. Big thank you to AWS. For recognizing all the work that people like Cloud Posse. I mean, we're not alone. I mean, there's so many open source maintainers out there doing big things for AWS. It's really nice for them to recognize maintainers every now and then, and we appreciate it. So thank you, AWS. We really appreciate the recognition for the work that we've been doing on our Terraform modules. All right, I'm done with announcements. Anybody have something else that caught their attention this week they want to bring up?
Kind of related to the EKS one. They added a configuration thing to the JSON. So sorry, they added a configuration to the API, and it's in the EKS module.
The configuration for what in the EKS?
Sorry, for the add-ons. AWS. So the EKS add-ons, sometimes you have to configure like ENI variables or something like that for the CNI plugin. If you look up AWS EKS add-on Terraform or something like that, I don't know if it's in the IA module. It might be in the, it's definitely in the Anton managed one, the AWS Terraform modules.
Yeah, that's probably piggybacking on, you can now deploy EKS add-ons using the API, which you couldn't do before. You always had to do it through actually through the Kubernetes side of things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so now you can do it through the API.
And the complete. And then main. And then if you do like a control F, yeah, there you go. So
this is on their module, but not the implementation. So we'd have to.
Yeah, somewhere in there, basically you can set little variables like enable ENI plugin or something like that for pod security groups without having to, just getting it into code really easily.
So
the configuration values,
EKS add-on, yeah.
And the configuration values, yeah.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, I think about 3 weeks ago or something, maybe a month ago, they made an announcement that you can now deploy any EKS add-on like right through the API, like through the through the EKS API, and you don't have to actually do it through Kubernetes like directly.
And there are third-party ones as well, like Upbound has one. I haven't done any cross-plane stuff, and Teleport has one.
Is there a way for people to, like, this is for AWS official add-ons, right? There's no way to add non-AWS add-ons, is there?
Maybe. I think you just pass in like an ID for the add-on name, and I bet a third party just probably has some sort of prefix in front of their name. I don't see why not.
I mean, how are add-ons registered, I guess, with the AWS?
Okay, I think I see one for HashiCorp Vault.
I pasted the link to the add-ons in the Zoom chat.
Okay, let me check that out. From independent software vendors. Okay, so they had a few launch partners here. So it's not like an extensive list, but they have some notable ones like Teleport and KubeCost, for example. Congrats to KubeCost. They get a lot of press.
Yeah, I was going to say that I don't think it could be any kind of dynamic add-on because there's no way to actually specify like where to get the code from. It gets it from like the EKS like official like add-on repository that they have.
But like ones that I'd be surprised that they don't have yet would be like the load balancer controller maybe, or EFS controller, or some of those things.
So
basically,
as I believe,
sorry
to interrupt, but as I believe this is related to the KubeCon, to the reInvent announcement, where they announced that EKS now supports AWS Marketplace. So you can put stuff in the AWS Marketplace, and that apparently allows you to use an add-on, according to the blog I linked in the Zoom chat. I could be wrong. I haven't dived into this yet.
That listing on the AWS docs is out of date because there's already one for Vault that they don't list in there. Oh yeah. Yep.
I mean, these are the
That
ones
looks...
installed the old school way. These are the ones deployed just as a Kubernetes resource. So these are to be not confused with the new add-on resource, because I don't believe any of these work with the new resource.
Yeah, the
example these are all deployed with Helm.
The example I just posted into chat actually uses the EKS add-ons. Let me see. Is that now? Oh, did they just use their module, or did they actually use the?
No,
resource?
This is using Helm release. So this is.
Oh,
kind of
see
like
there. So they called it the same name. So I'm sorry. I read that as resource instead of module.
Yeah.
In the article. My bad.
Eric, I posted the link in the Zoom chat to the blog. They also have a screenshot that explains it nicely. If you scroll a tiny bit.
Yes.
Yeah, literally the second screenshot, sorry. It's more clear if you scroll. Yeah. So AWS Marketplace add-ons, and there are a bunch of them. I assume they're the same thing, but I haven't dived into this, so I could be wrong.
That's cool. Have they done anything like this for ECS that you know, Vlad? Like,
ECS doesn't have that concept.
I thought that ECS had different sort of prepackaged appliances you could get on it, but I think those are kind of closed off to you in terms of all the configuration you get. I think you just kind of pay for somebody to run a ECS cluster with an app appliance you want.
Yeah, networking and load balancers and all of those things have no choice in ECS. They're all defaulted to the AWS configuration. So you don't have the same plugin or add-on like infrastructure like you do with Kubernetes. So
Right.
There's no like equivalent to do that kind of thing.
Anyways,
like,
this is exciting.
Nobody writes. Very few people write software and add-ons on top of ECS, so there is no market for this. But a lot of people write stuff for Kubernetes.
Yeah, for what it's worth, but I just tried to go down a path of finding some things in the marketplace that would allow you to do that, and they have these delivery methods that you can sort of filter by, and none of them seem to be like install direct or whatever. Like the delivery methods are like professional services, container method, Helm chart, AMI, or SaaS. So I don't know, how those add-ons will work.
They deploy software in a cluster that you control. It's basically for running things into your account. It's more of a SaaS delivery method. I do a lot of work with SaaS companies. So I can go deeper into that if you want. But that's software that's running on your AKS cluster, like, I don't know, running managed Vault or whatever. It's not software running in your ECS cluster, like, I don't know, like a custom CNI or a plugin or something.
You're missing what I guess what I was saying. I was saying I went to the marketplace to try to find like add-ons that have been listed to the marketplace that you could deploy in the fashion that we're talking about, and I can't find any.
Got it.
That's all I was saying. I was hopeful that what you said was true, is that you can now publish to the marketplace, and then using the ID from the marketplace, you can then use this API call or Terraform resource to deploy that add-on, but I can't seem to find anything that is released to the marketplace unless I just don't know how to search for it.
For the EKS stuff, at the end of the blog post, there's an email address to get in touch. They validate and check for CVs and validate that the add-on works. So it's not just publish your stuff to AWS Marketplace and now it can be installed. Like we've all seen the AMI is charging $5 per second or whatever, and stealing all your keys. Like they validate this. It's not just a hands-off process, which is both good and bad.
Yeah, got it.
So I want to get to one of our first questions of the day from Jonas. Jonas has been asking here about alternatives for delivering services with Terraform, assuming you can't use any of the Taco providers, Terraform Cloud, Spacelift, and Zero-Scaler, and the rest. So like if you're gonna roll your own approach for Terraform, say using GitHub Actions, how bad would it be for a relatively small product, say 7 services? And what are the arguments against this that you've heard? And the reasoning, Jonah says,
the reasoning apparently, so I I was on a plane, but I was able to make it. Apparently, so I sort of been designing a system to run Terraform, and I suppose most importantly the applies in Circle CI, which is just like any other CI provider. And a colleague sort of emphatically said, look, I've tried to run Terraform in CI containers before, and it's a nightmare in certain contexts. He was sort of coming out of the context of like, I think when he was doing it, they were building ECS clusters, which I get, like that's such an involved initial process, since you have to deal with like auto scaling groups and the cluster itself, and it's a little bit more intensive. So, but yeah, he emphatically kind of was like, yeah, there's a lot of corner cases here. And so, yeah, that's the, and the apparently one of the bigger issues was people going in and, so these Terraform applies would be running from within the service repos, right? So we're good little boys and girls, and we run our Terraform in the service repos, embedded in the service repos. That'll never change. And apparently, when there's a Terraform apply CI step that's in the rest of the CI process, people going in and sort of canceling jobs for one reason or another if there's a fly that's in the middle of running, can actually cause annoying problems. So
Yeah, I think what you nailed it is what we discovered as well, is that there are so many Medium posts out there on how to do CI and CD generically with Terraform, but they are all the weekend project caliber posts on
yeah,
how to
definitely.
do this.
They're all the same. They're like, set up your CI, and then
Mhm.
here's a template for like format, validate, init, plan,
Yes,
apply. But, like,
exactly.
no,
Yeah.
and I mean, this is another, yeah, so yeah, I'm just heavily in denial right now.
Well,
Just because
So-
like as a heavy user of both TFC and Spacelift, I mean, the issue with TFC is it's absolutely bizarrely expensive and pretty much is like, especially in economic tech economic times like this where everybody's going through austerity,
Yeah.
like TFC costs, I kid you not, are on the radar almost every day for one reason or another. Like we're trying to, you know, figure out ways to slim down runs, or I mean, we're probably going to drop the whole thing.
Yeah.
Honestly, we're probably going to drop the whole
Yeah.
thing. So, yeah.
So I'd like to just preface all this that we are actually working on GitHub Actions with Terraform and doing it the right way. And it's super not trivial. It's a very expensive project to implement. And I think we're going to solve it. We're going to solve it.
Okay.
But
So
there's something we
why?
can't
So
solve.
like, why
I-
specifically? Or let Matt talk, because I
Yeah.
every time I come in here with some big thing, Matt always like drops some. Matt always drops some bombs on me. So
So
come
I
on,
want to
Matt.
be respectful. I want to be respectful though, because I saw both Vlad and Jim raise their hands. So I
Yeah,
don't want to
okay.
preempt them in making their points. So I think I saw Vlad first, and then Jim.
Yeah.
I can be super short. So, Jonas, the only reason why you cannot use Spacelift, Terraform Cloud, M0, whatever, is cost. Like there is no other reason.
I think to keep things short and simple, yeah, basically. I mean,
Okay.
I could maybe get away with it right now. Like, strictly speaking, if I wanted to absolutely bring the hammer down and be like, okay, never mind, like, actually, we're already using Terraform Cloud, right? We're already using it, and we're using it extensively. So if I wanted to, I could be like, hey, we're going to extend Terraform Cloud costs, whatever. But that's not a good long-term strategy because everything's starting to boomerang in that direction. So
No, that is totally legit, and HashiCorp has predatory pricing with Terraform Cloud. I'm not gonna get into that. In the interest of keeping this short, I implemented Terraform with GitHub Actions. It's hell. There are a lot of corner cases and things to consider and stuff failing, both around security, state files, everything that Eric has on the screen right now. It's an endless face palming of yourself, and worse, it's not just affecting you, it's affecting the whole organization because they cannot run Terraform, they cannot apply infrastructure. So my next question was going to be, in your list there wasn't Atlantis. Why not Atlantis? Atlantis is debatably cheap, you can run it yourself. Is
right.
that not an option?
No, I mean, no, yeah. But the thing with Atlantis is that it doesn't solve the, I mean, I don't, so here, okay, tell me how Atlantis beats this idea just for a proof of concept. So what I'm thinking is, you know, I implement, because there's a whole bunch of compliance stuff that I want to do as well that I would never do in Terraform Cloud, like using OPA and just other compliance stuff, some of which I've already started and is actually working. So not just like fantasies, not stuff that I want to throw away. So what I'm thinking is, you know, I implement init, format, validate, plan in my CI, because those are sort of relatively stateless, and I can do unit testing against them to make sure that they look good. And if somebody blows them away manually by accident by canceling a job, no big deal. Then I can delegate the actual apply to an event-driven, like little serverless function that'll be long running. Yes, I know they have a timeout. This will be a long running one. And to me, that's like effectively the same thing as Atlantis, because Atlantis doesn't solve the paranoia problem that has been raised, which is, hey, if you're trying to build something important and somebody cancels that workflow, which will happen from time to time, you're going to have to go in and figure out how to clean this stuff up and fix the state, whatever. So I don't think Atlantis solves that problem, but if it does, cool.
What it solves, though, is the biggest thing I see missing from this list, which is the thing that I was highlighting over here, is, well, you need this plan and approval workflow. And once you have a plan that's been applied, any other plan that has ever been created is now invalid. So now you need to
for that component.
Yeah. So now you need to introduce some kind of a database. You need to introduce, well, so Atlantis uses the file system. It's not a serverless app, right? So it has a stateful server. It can have it uses the file system to make sure there are no other locks at that time. So we're implementing this with DynamoDB, a combination of DynamoDB and S3, and we're implementing it with GitHub Actions to do this. And we're implementing all the logic around invalidation and storing the metadata around pull requests.
And this is for a customer, I take it, that was like, no, I'm not using Spacelift. Like, I don't want to use Spacelift. Like, why would you embark on this journey?
A large enterprise that is air gapped that can't use Spacelift.
Okay. Yep. Okay, no problem.
And to be clear, we aren't doing anything else for them. All we are doing is GitHub Actions because it's such a big project just to do this.
Yeah. No, I definitely internalize your your fear about the GitHub Actions thing. So
I have two things that I want to say, but I really don't want to preempt Jim again because I know he's been patiently waiting.
Well,
So,
Jim and I,
Jim.
okay. Jim, go for it. Jim and I spoke already. So
yeah, thanks. So I've done this as others have done in GitHub Actions and used it in production, and encountered some of these same problems that you've called out in that article. I got a proof of concept I did last year. Yeah, it really is kind of building your own car. The semantics are all there in GitHub Actions to address these issues, even though there's a lack of state for sure. But it really is building your own car. It's better if you're able to use a SaaS service like Spacelift, and you leverage the programmers that have built out all the function. One of the main issues with GitHub Actions is, as you called out, the lack of a database, right? And the lack of also make post requests from, say, a comic or something like that. So you have to figure out a way to create these functionalities that are more trivial if you have an app that can actually do it. But it is possible. The semantics are there. You have to do some jankiness in order to make it work. And I've made it work while I was waiting for the project planning process at my day job to go ahead and approve something like a Spacelift. And it's been a year since we've been using this thing and duct tape together, and I'm surprised that we haven't actually implemented things. So I feel your pain. What I actually planned to do this over the holiday break was actually formally create a set of GitHub Actions that does this stuff. But maybe there's an opportunity to collaborate here or something. But
yeah. I can say that I personally have invested several hundred hours in this already, and we're working through it. And I would say sometime in Q1 we'll have something working. I don't know how quickly we'll be able to release it for everyone after that, and I guess Eric will talk about that. But the couple of things that I wanted to point out. One thing I know that you were talking about before was that Jonas, was that plan you said is you listed as one of your non-stateful tasks,
well,
but in fact,
air quotes. I know.
Yeah, but in fact, plan is generating an artifact that you then want to store so that you can apply it at a later date, and that's a pretty big one. So that's one of the things that we're tackling. Yeah. The second thing that I'll tell you is that
just to interject on that, not to digress, but just to interject on that. Yes, what you're saying, strictly speaking, is true, but no, my counter to that is, for my purposes, if somebody cancels the workflow, a borked plan will not lead to, okay, we just died in the middle of an
Yes,
apply, and
correct.
now I have like half the resources in the state's borked, so I have to roll back or clean everything up.
Yeah, so I'll talk about that part next, and that was the next thing I was going to say is that so GitHub Actions actually has this really weird canceling and preempting logic. So the way that if you cancel a GitHub action workflow, the way that it determines if your individual job can be canceled is it evaluates the if condition on that job. And if the if condition on that job evaluates to true, it will not cancel that job. It will allow that job to continue to run until completion, even if the rest of the workflow has been canceled. So that's why you'll often see like people use the if success function so that they can get like notifications or run certain things even if a job fails. That's basically how that works. So even if a job is canceled, you'll notice that like those notification jobs will still run because they have if success. I'm sorry, if always is the one I'm talking about, not success. If always, because that always will evaluate to true. So as long as that condition evaluates to true, GitHub Actions will allow that job stub to continue to run until completion. Only if it doesn't evaluate to true will it then preempt it. And I think you get 7,500 milliseconds before it sends like, first it sends a SIGINT to it. And then it gives you 7,500 seconds. And then if you don't clean yourself up within 7,500 seconds, it sends sig term basically at that point and it kills the process. So, but there's a hack, like I said, you can, as long as that evaluates to true, you can continue to run it until it completes.
So yeah, I mean, so I feel the GitHub
Circle
Actions
CI
thing,
doesn't handle it. So.
No, right. And so, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, this is sort of my, this is what I see happening, right? I basically have a couple options. Number one is I probably could just go, hey, look, let's do this in TFC right now. And then let's talk about a change from that if we really want to talk about cost. Because I would, where I work is it's not like we're, we've got money for stuff, but at the same time, like TFC cost concern is like, it's serious. It's an everyday thing. So there really is now an atmosphere of sort of like, all right, how much are we really getting out of this? So I could probably go the TFC route if I had to. However, at the same time, I came across this situation because there's an there's a product that is struggling, and getting onto that project, taking over that project, it's like, okay, there's literally no DevOps CI processes in place. Like there's no secrets, there's no TF and CI, like there's nothing. So, I'm hesitant to implement something like GitHub Actions because strategically, paradigmatically, it's like now I've got TFC and I've made some investment into like, a GitHub Actions thing. If I was going to do something like that, I would just do something even crappier and basically do what I said, where I'm like, all right, I'm going to handle, everything up to the plan probably in CI. I can deal with the plan getting canceled. That's fine. And then, if we make it past plan, when it comes to the apply job, I will require the plan to have completed, in which case if somebody cancels, that would work. And then when we get to the apply job, I will basically say, cool, send the plan to this event system and give me a cloud container or a cloud function of some type that's going to come up to run Terraform apply, right? And the reason that, that situation came to mind is because, and I don't know if, what people think about this, but because it's a compromise of both things. It's not me investing a ton of time into like writing a little mini Terraform CI system for this one team, which I'm not going to do. But it also avoids the sort of, the cost bloat of TFC, right? So I think I would do that, as sort of like just a stopgap measure before I actually went the GitHub Actions route, because that even feels more, like trying to do something serious. And I guess if I was going to have to do something serious, I would probably just say like, all right, why? Let's just bite the cost bullet and use
I'm
TFC.
missing though the jump here. You probably mentioned it, but I didn't. It sounded like, well, you're not going to use GitHub Actions. You're not going to use Terraform Cloud. You're not going to write something custom for them.
Well,
So where is it going to be?
The custom part would be, so the custom part would be basically, I would implement a TFCI workflow like you see in the, weekend warrior jobs or however you put it, Eric. But I would stop short of handling the apply through CI. So the custom part would then be, I would write a Terraform module to handle building serverless functions specifically for the purposes of handling Terraform applies. These would be long running functions.
You can't apply from a serverless function because you're going to time out and you're going to run out of.
Well, no, I think
ephemeral
you're thinking
space.
of, aren't you thinking of AWS though? Because in GCP, they can run for up to an hour.
Sorry.
If they're HTTP post-based, they can run up to an hour.
I was thinking AWS, but
yeah, for sure. And because of that, that was like the first thing I Googled. I'm like, oh man, this will probably never work.
So the other problem you have, and this is the biggest challenge for us so far in doing this, we've come up with a solution. It's for all intents and purposes implemented, is the gatekeeping of this. How do you make sure you're not deploying the same stack twice? How do you make sure that you invalidate all the other plans like for that stack once you have successfully planned? How do you roll back if you have a problem? During deploy, like serverless functions crash all the time, just like someone cancels it. It's just another thing, and you have to handle all those scenarios, which, I know you're saying it's stopgap, but you've got a lot of engineering work to do your stopgap, solution.
The stopgap is, I want to jump in here because it's like the stopgap that you mentioned is not the stopgap. It's you not understanding the complexity. It's not just a simple function that runs Terraform apply. No, it's a function that has to init. It has to download modules. It needs credentials for those modules. It needs to auth to with a different account. It needs to give the actual engineer that ran the apply some feedback or some live logs. It needs to do cleanup. It needs to disconnect. Like there is a lot of things that are there.
Well,
it's
no.
I mean, you're just, let me finish. You're just seeing the apply because you were lucky enough not to get into the weeds of this. It is horrible. And that sentiment is being shared by many people on this call. Like, it sucks. You are basically wanting to re-implement Atlantis because Atlantis doesn't check every single checkmark that you have.
Right.
Yeah, and let me
Yep.
let me also just emphasize what Vlad's saying, just to give you this point. I'm a very senior engineer who has tons and tons and tons of experience in this. And I'm telling you, I'm already over 200 hours into this development and I'm not done yet.
Okay.
So use that as a guide.
No, I mean,
right?
I think, I mean, you definitely had me convinced about the GitHub Actions thing, but I guess, I mean, for what you're saying, Vlad, like, no, I wasn't, I didn't think that the function would, so Vlad, just to let you know, like my company runs entirely serverless, or it's totally serverless. Like all the biggest projects are run with nothing but functions. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and yes, I wasn't going into it thinking like, that it's going to be a function with one text line that says Terraform apply -auto approve or something like that. You're right. I would have to, put my Datadog creds in there. I would have to get modules and all that stuff. It's just that I know how to do that. It makes sense to me. And it's like, it's just crappy enough to, save me time, but it's not involved enough. I was thinking to make me feel like, okay, like you said, I'm reinventing Atlantis, but yeah, I mean, okay. I mean, I definitely get the sentiment of like, basically what I hear being said is like, you have to use a taco. Like there's no other way. You have to use a taco. That's pretty much what I hear being said.
Can I be a devil advocate or like show just my own humility here in a moment?
Yeah.
So one of the problems, there's a lot of background noise if you mute for a moment there. Yeah, okay, thanks. So we run into this problem, not just with this, but also with infrastructure. So many people get by or how do I want to say? Okay, so we have all these problems. We're deploying these large scale infrastructures with Terraform, and I cannot imagine it being done any other way because the curse of knowledge, seeing all these problems that could come up or the problems that we have because of some of the scale that we're operating at. And yet people get by with so much less. Bigger companies, companies with more infrastructure, spending more money, get by with less. So there's this conundrum I'm at, like, why are we having all these, why do we have all these problems and yet other people get by with less? So different requirements, different assumptions and things like that. So let's get to the CI and the CD portion. So many people do more, I venture safely to say that more people run Terraform in Jenkins than they do in Terraform Cloud, Spacelift, and Zero combined. That would be my fair assumption. But do they have all of these other controls, checks and balances and capabilities? And they probably don't, because if you, I guess, rank order what's important to you, or the edge cases you care about, or you've run into, or the consequences of doing it the wrong way, like being so few that it'll happen now, we'll just take our chances. Maybe it's good enough. I just want to highlight a couple of people in the channel have said this, and this is why I'm also emphasizing it. Søren says, you know, that they've been able to, well, no, it was Michael Jenkins and, oh yeah, and Søren both said that they operate simple pipelines with Terraform and it's been fine with a small amount of trouble over the last year. And I believe it. So
So I have a quick analogy for this, like really quick. So this is what I would say. So one time I did a consulting project for a multi-billion-dollar paper company who was literally like cutting down like trees and turning it into paper. And I went and did a whole evaluation of their systems. And I found out that their 1.2 million square foot warehouse that took in all the pulp, converted it to paper, put it on trucks, did all these things, only functioned as a result of having an AIX desktop that was sitting underneath someone's desk covered in 7 inches of dust. And it worked, but that doesn't mean it was a good idea just because it works. So there's my quick one.
Yeah,
And I
no,
can say,
that's why I came here, to hear you tell that story, Matt. That is a brutal. That's what I needed to hear. No, I get it. I hear what people are saying, and yep, I may have strong opinions, but I'm also, you know, pretty good about, you know, sort of.
Jonas, one of the things that I'll never forget an engineering director that I respect, Elizabeth Henderson, tell me is that she thinks about feedback loops, right? That's all she does for her job. She looks at what are the inputs and outputs of systems and how they interact and they iterate. So, I mean, we haven't even talked about the fact that you're going to create a Terraform plan somewhere. It's going to it's going to validate good. It's going to look good. It's going to pass code review. You're going to merge the thing in, and then you realize that the API doesn't support that function or some other thing. You forgot to supply some other thing, right? And that was just, nobody caught that. And that happens, like, you know, like I would say like 1 out of 10 times when you do a Terraform apply, if not more. So you have to think about the feedback loops that you're building. And if it's going to involve GitHub Actions and it's a simple feedback loop, it's a small team and you can coordinate, and yeah, it's not perfect, but when was doing anything in Terraform ever perfect?
Yeah, no, and that's a fair point too, because this is a very low maturity team. Like that's, and I'm just visiting. So the idea is I build something out and then I leave. So it's
people. You got to build a process for people that works for that team and gets, you know, is net positive in terms of productivity, and you'll be okay. Whether it's a you know, it's a janky GitHub Actions or it's a fancy taco system, it's really you're gonna have to make that decision as the architect of that process.
All right. Well,
that's my wad. I shot my wad. So thank you very much, and I appreciate all the input as usual.
All right. Well, thank you, Jonas. That was a good question. You know, you did bring, I think, this question up a couple months ago or something. I see you're still noodling on it, still trying to find the angle.
Wait, you mean in the meeting?
Yeah, in office hours.
No. That was about doing a that was about doing observability with Terraform at scale. So basically, that was
okay.
because
Fair
I
point.
used
yeah.
I
Okay.
used Terraformer to export like 100,000
Yeah.
Terraform monitors and was like,
Yeah.
hey, like,
Okay.
what's
Okay.
the best way to go about this? Is this even worth my time?
Because
Which
you were
I
going to
did
write
do.
something. Yeah, you were going to write something in place of, I forget what it was, but do something new. Okay, well, you have to let us know what you ended up doing there. We're out of time for today, but I'd like to know what the solution was you came up with there. And thanks for bringing up this question. I think it got everyone pretty involved.
Yeah,
So it was
I
good.
usually do.
So if you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, head over to youtube.com/cloudposse to subscribe. You'll get every one of our past office hours sessions. We'll post this one there as well. It's a great way also to share office hours with your team if you want to get everybody on the same page. For example, if your team is talking about doing GitHub Actions instead of using a taco provider, today's session would be a great one to share with your team to drive that conversation. All right, our newsletter, we publish it weekly. It highlights all the cool links and announcements that we come across. So subscribe for that. If you want to connect with me, go to linkedin.com/in/Osterman. Again, linkedin.com/in/Osterman. I love to connect with our community and see what everyone's up to. Lastly, if you like what you've seen here in the conversation, you'd like to have a more high-touch relationship with Cloud Posse, reach out. Go to cloudposse.com/quiz. Again, cloudposse.com/quiz, and we can figure out if we're fit for the help you need. We specialize in all things Terraform, AWS, and we have blueprints to get you up and started quickly on AWS. So thank you all. Have a great rest of your weekend. I'll see you all next Wednesday.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.